Hi, my name is Arvy Villamarso, and in this short video, we're going to answer the question, what is the difference between a resume and a CV? Now that is one question that you can very easily Google. And as a matter of fact, if you've stumbled upon a couple of the websites that answer these questions, you're going to basically get the same answer. A resume is something short. Maybe it's just a page long because after all, it is meant to be a summary. And then you will also see that a CV by nature is something that's a little bit more detailed, a little bit more comprehensive. And originally, this was designed for the academe. So imagine that you are a professor. Maybe you have a master's degree. Maybe you are a PhD. And maybe you've published a couple of research papers in the past. And you would want to put some detail into that. And so typically you could end up with something significantly longer than a resume. Now, what do people actually do when they apply to jobs? Well, I have had the privilege of heading recruitment departments of 3 different companies in the past. 2 of them were in the Philippines and 1 was in the US. And what I've seen consistently is that people tend to come up with something that is a little bit longer than a resume and yet a little bit shorter than a CV. So what does this mean? Well, specifically for you as a fresh graduate, you probably will have a resume which is about a page long because there's really not a lot of companies that you can put in there. But please make sure that if you've had your internship somewhere, or maybe if you've had a summer job, or maybe if you helped out in the family business, make sure that you put it in there because that's real life experience. Now, definitely you're going to put the college that you came from, the course that you took. Maybe you could also say a little bit about what are some of the projects that you're proud of. What are some of your extracurricular activities? Feel free to put it in there because if you have not had a full-time job in the past, people would want to see what you've done while you were in school. Now, as you accumulate more experience, let's say you've been working for a couple of years, then you could put in probably all the companies that you've worked for in the past. And typically what people do is they add a little bit more detail. Like they say something about the company. What was this company about? What business was it into? Where were they located? Did they have a global footprint or a local footprint? And then they also say something about the position, like what are some of the things that they've done? What are their tasks and responsibilities? And then they probably will also talk about what are the accomplishments that they are proud of. If you're going to look for a job in the Philippines, then you can definitely put in something a little bit longer than a 1-page resume. If you are planning on working abroad, like specifically in a first world country like Singapore or the US, you probably would want to put a 1-page resume. As a matter of fact, in some parts of the US, even if you have been working for a couple of years, if you give them a resume which is more than a page long, they might not have the patience to read it. Now, let's take a look at what happens when you do submit your resume. Chances are, recruiters are going through hundreds of resumes every day. And they really will not spend 5 minutes looking at each one. They have been trained on how to quickly scan resumes. And given that, you probably want to emphasize some keywords. Specifically for a fresh graduate, you would want to talk about the course that you took. And what is the relevance of this course in real life? Like what jobs would really make sense for someone who graduated with that kind of a degree? And definitely, if you've had some sort of internship, you have to put it in there. Talk about what are some of the things that you learned in your internship, things that you probably would not have learned in school. So one question that I get asked is it important for me to put a photo in my resume? And should I have it professionally designed by a graphic designer? Well, my answer would be yes and no. It would be a yes if you know for a fact that the company is looking for some sort of image. If you are applying for, let's say, a position in design, they definitely would take a look at your resume and see if you have design skills. But if you're applying for a job that has nothing to do with graphic design, it probably is not necessary. As a matter of fact, nowadays, if you submit your resume online, chances are, what will screen all of those hundreds of resumes that a company got is not even human. It probably will just go into some computer where certain keywords are going to be picked out. And if you use the keyword that the company is looking for, then you might get called in for an interview. And so it's very important that you put essential keywords in your resume. Definitely, you would want to put your course and your school, and you probably would want to say, what are some of the jobs that your course will be very useful for? And of course, if you've done some internships in the past, please make sure you highlight what are some of the experiences that you got during that internship. Things that you probably would not have learned if you were in school only. And lastly, please make sure that you talk about what you're really good at. And please don't use, typical words like, oh, I'm a perfectionist or I'm a team player. Those words probably don't mean much nowadays. So highlight things like, what are some of the projects that you enjoyed? What are some of the accomplishments that you're really proud of? What are some of the things that you're interested in outside of academics? Because these things show you the unique flavor that you bring into the company. I hope that answered your question. And maybe I just want to close with one last thing. If you are a fresh graduate, please don't worry about not having enough work experience in your very short resume, because a lot of companies know that if a position is open to people who have never worked before, they're not really looking for a long list of companies. As a matter of fact, just talking about your education as well as your internship is going to be enough.